This is John Paul Mendocha, Doctor of Speed Selling, and this is Raging Verbalist number 45. In fact, I'm doing this one from a remote location, secret, in the town of my birth. And no, I didn't go to Bethlehem. So I just want to say thank you for being with us for 44 of these. This is number 45. And hopefully 45 is a little smoother than 44 because Murphy came and put the old alligator chomps on us and bit us in a lot of unpleasant places. With me, as always, of course, is the lovely Sandra. Sandra will be asking the questions. And for a quick reminder, go to the Position to Win book Facebook group. You can always post questions there. Sandra will collect them and pick them up. And who knows, they might make it here. You may not ever win anything except just a little bit of insight knowledge. Raging Verbalist, we talk about a variety of topics, mostly about business, mostly about how to make sure that you stay sane and make more money. So with all that, let me just introduce Sandra. Sandra, thank you for being here again.
Thanks for having me. How are you today?
Kind of in a buzzy mood, but yeah, doing great. And because we're just racing around, but yeah. And yourself?
Doing well. Just hanging out.
She's just chill. Okay.
Just chill, yeah.
All right. So for those of you who missed last week, boo his, is that last week we were supposed to be doing what we're going to talk about today. But of course, what happened is that first my internet went unstable, her internet went unstable. We were just unstable. I mean, now some people say I'm unstable on a regular basis, but we're talking about technically unstable. So we just talked and ranted for a period of time, and hopefully you got something out of that, which is Murphy always rides for free. But today we're going to be talking about the very important topic, an important topic because, of course, it's something that I think a lot about, which is time. And you'll hear that we're introducing a brand new time zone. So with that, Sandra, what is the first question off of the stack?
Yes. Why do you wear two watches?
So for those of you who do not know, I wear two watches. Now I'm using a virtual green screen, so I have to do this in slow motion. Drum roll, please. And there is the first watch. And then we go up slowly, and there is the second watch. So I started wearing two watches years ago for a variety of reasons, but the biggest one is that when I was traveling for doing turnarounds, I would have two time zones, and I didn't want to have to do the math because first off, I found out that if I had to do the math, it took like some brain power. And it's not that I couldn't do it. I mean, I can actually add and subtract and do that multiply and divide thing. But what I found out is that I couldn't really do it instantly. So if I landed at the client site, which was 3-hour time zone away from where I was, then what happened is that I was really in bad shape. So what I did was I just decided that the easiest way to do it, the best way to do it, is to, of course, wear two watches. So one watch always is my home time zone. So that way, whenever I'm traveling and I need to call home, call my office, call my wife, call somebody back there, all I have to do is look at that one and bang, I know exactly what time it is. And I would set the other watch to wherever time zone I was at. Now, this has worked all around the world. It's worked everywhere. Now, I know that there are lots of people who say, John, I don't need that. I can figure it out. Yeah, you're the people who are calling me at the wrong time because you can't do the math or the subtraction or whatever happens to be. So I started wearing two watches, and then it became a thing. And my favorite fun thing about wearing two watches is that first time I actually did it on stage, and I did it to effect. I had two big watches. I like watches. I get a whole bunch of watches. And I'm up on stage, and this is a time where, where people are wearing suits and, and ties and really good stuff. And I'm sitting there, and of course, they had the camera on me. So there's like a Jumbotron, 350 people in the audience. And I started watching the audience, and I wanted to see if they would notice that I was wearing two watches. And what would happen is that I would see them do that, and I would just slowly move my hand in a way that it would show one watch. Now it was a gesture. I wasn't doing it. Didn't have like the big, like in the cartoon, a big arrow pointing down saying, look at this or look at that. So I didn't was doing that. So what I did was I was sitting there and I would just slowly do that. And I would watch the audience who would then look at the big jumbotrons and start pointing and start talking. And I knew they were talking about the watches. So the point that I'm making is that if you're going to stand out from a crowd, there are lots of subtle ways to do it. And one of the best ways I found is I became the guy with two watches. Quick watch story. I was in the middle of this negotiation and we were negotiating a multi-million dollar deal. This is when I still worked for like had a day job kind of thing. And I'm sitting there and we are just at the very end of the negotiation. We're arguing about the final pieces. And I said, okay, that's it. The last thing that I've got to give you is this. And I stood up and I had two watches on and I took off my one watch and it was a genuine Mickey Mouse watch. And of course, they're still sold today, but it's a genuine Mickey Mouse Disney watch. By the way, Disney doesn't send me any money. Don't ban don't ban this, by the way, on YouTube just because I said Disney and Mickey Mouse. But it was a Mickey Mouse watch. And I put it down and I said, okay, I'm throwing this in the deal, but that's it. And they looked at it and they went, wow, that's a cool watch. Now, what they didn't realize is that I think it was an $80 band on a $40 watch, but it did look cool because, of course, I threw away the cheap band that came with it. So I've always worn two watches, especially in business. It has become kind of somewhat of a signature. And it is actually a way to keep me on time. It is not frivolous. So like right now, I can just go look at my watch, bing, and know exactly what time it is at home, or I can go bing and know what time it is here. Now, I added the sound effects just in case somebody is not quite sure. So that's why I wear two watches. Sandra, what is the next question?
Why do people get time zones so mixed up?
Now, that's a good question. But I'll start with how one man solved this problem. And this one man happened to be, well, I would say he's a dictator, despot, not a good guy. But Stalin, when he was running the Soviet Union, would be so pissed off because he would want to call somebody. And if those of you who are not good with this whole thing called, maps and time zones and stuff, is that the geography showed that there were like 11 time zones in the Soviet Union, unlike the US, which has, depending upon, US mainland has 4, but if you add in Alaska and then you add in Hawaii, but anyway, but they have 11 time zones. So Stalin took care of this math thing by what he did was he decreed that whatever time it was in Moscow, if it was 11 in the morning, it was 11 in the morning, and Vladivostok, at the Pacific Ocean, which was 11, like 10 time zones away or whatever the hell it was, made for a really weird situation. So that's how he solved that problem. Now, for those of you who don't know, there are like 24 recognized time zones. There are other countries that are off by half an hour. There are certain places that are off by 15 minutes. I don't know. I guess they're adjusting to try to make people crazy. But what happens is that most people understand their time zone that they're on. And in fact, even my PR agent, love him, but he doesn't understand what he says. Can you make this interview at X? That he has to take into account what time zone. And we are constantly saying to him, what time zone are you planning on having this John on the interview? And we have to do that because he's a nice guy, but we are training him that he has to give us the time zone and has to tell us what's going on. So people get it messed up because they just don't get it figured out. And they just don't say, okay, how do I just, know where this is at? Now, today you would think it would be easier. Smartphones can show multiple time zones. Computers can do it all the time. And yet people get this screwed up almost all the time. And by the way, Google calendars, if somebody from Google is listening, because people tell me all the time, John, Google is always listening. Well, guess what, Google? You suck as far as that stuff is concerned because you don't take care of all those time zones. It just doesn't happen. It just doesn't work. So that's where we end up with the time zone fun and problems because people have a hard time conceptualizing and thinking about it. So my suggestion is keep working with coming up with coping strategies because there's nothing worse than calling somebody in the wrong time zone. What is our next one, Sandra?
All right. What about daylight savings time?
Ben Franklin called daylight savings time, and this is a guy in the 1700s, this kind of absurd idea that what you are is your feet are cold in bed. And what you do is you cut off the top 1 foot of your blanket, take it down to the bottom where your feet are and sew it on, and therefore you now have warmer feet instead of course just moving the blanket. So daylight savings time was originally invented because, well, Sandra and her kinfolk were out there in the farm and they needed to be able to harvest the crops. Because they needed to harvest the crops, they decided what they do is they would shift the time zone around, change it up by an hour. By doing that, they would end up with this great idea. And then you have an hour longer to harvest, and everything was really cool. Now, there's been a controversy as it's gone on over the years. And the question is that some places they want to go on daylight savings time all the time or whatever. For those of you who have never traveled to the state of Arizona, Arizona does not change, and therefore it does change because half of the time it's in one time zone and the other half of the time it's in another time zone. So, fun with it. Daylight savings time is one of those artifacts which I think is going to hang around for a long time. And basically, people have to deal with it. Now, interesting thing is that when we change and it's, fall back and spring forward and all these little mnemonics to keep track of it, I find that people struggle with time all the time. What we don't struggle with here on the Raging Verbalist is coming up with a crass promotion in which I slowly but surely, even with the funky green screen, slowly but surely work it up and say, if you have not read this book, what's wrong with you? I mean, most businesses fail in the first 5 minutes. It just takes them 3 to 5 years to realize it. Position to Win. You can go to positiontowinbook.com. You can go to Amazon, Books a Million, Barnes and Noble. You can go all kinds of places and get it digitally. Again, you can get a Kindle version, you can get an Apple version, you can get it all over the place. Also, if you want to find out what I've been hanging around and doing lately, is go to turnaroundengine.com, find out where the opportunities are today in this crazy times that we live in. And finally, again, if you are not a subscriber, check us out, become a subscriber. And, I'm talking about from YouTube, like it, send a nice, wonderful comment. If you don't have a nice comment, what did your mother say? If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say it at all. By the way, if people actually maybe wait, Sandra, we'll do that. How all those centuries of mothers and grandmothers trying to change children and where we are in the internet age. Write that down. We're going to do that one, Raging
There you
Verbalist
go.
crowd. So there you go. Crass promotional thing. Check it out. Go to positionwinbook.com, positionbook.com. I mean, you don't even have to wait until this is over. Just you get another screen, order the book. You're back. Hey, I'll be talking. I'll still be here. Okay, Sandra, what do we have for our next exciting insight? And it looks like happy-go-lucky Murphy has come and joined us again. See, I was talking about Murphy. If you've ever watched the movie Beetlejuice, if you say Beetlejuice like 3 times, then I will not say it because Beetlejuice will arrive. Oh, wait, but Murphy does this without fail. So we just had Murphy just show up and bang on our door, crack it open, and here we are. Murphy is back and better than ever before. Now, I'm okay, but for those of you, because of the way this is set up, is that, well, it appears that we have lost Sandra. So let me share with you a couple of other things that we could go over, but we'll see if Sandra comes back. Most importantly, what I'm hoping is that you're getting something out of it. See, the importance is that you know how to use your time effectively. And Sandra is thankfully back. Say the question fast because, and since I'm on the road, I don't have any of the questions with me, so I am just here by myself, tap dancing away, tap in. Okay, so what's that question
All right.
before Murphy gives you
With
the hook?
all this, all of this buildup, even from Zoom, there you said there was a new time zone. What's that all about?
So we have a brand new time zone. I mean, if it worked for Ben Franklin in snipping off the, part of the blanket to warm your feet, if it worked for Stalin to decree that all time zones were the same, well, I think it's time for me, a guy who wears two watches, a person who's time obsessed, to come up with my own time zone, and that is Raging Verbalist time, RVT. And RVT means that every Friday from now on, set forth and decreed every Friday from now on, you'll be able to watch Raging Verbalist on Facebook Live and YouTube at 9 a.m. Pacific time. And we will adjust. We will adjust for daylight savings time, for regular time, for standard time. We're going to be there. But Raging Verbalist time is now 9 a.m. So mark it in your calendar. If you've got one of those big giant Sharpies, I just suggest you find a nice part of a white wall and write that down there. I mean, in big letters. I mean, almost like a graffiti artist. So you don't forget Raging Verbalist time, which is now 9 a.m., not 8, not 8. If you said 8, you're wrong. 9. 9. 3 times 3 is 9. 9 is the number. Number is 9. 9 is the number. And for some people, it's a lucky number. And for us, it's now 9 a.m. Pacific time for the Raging Verbalist. And that is the new time zone. So make sure you're going to be there every single week, because how would you ever get along? I mean, can you even forgive yourself if you miss this? I don't know. I don't see how you could. Okay, Sandra, what do you have for our next question?
All right. How do you do business in a global era where you deal with people all over the world?
Well, I have clients and customers from Australia to New Zealand to Peru. I have people in the UK. I have people in Poland, a lot of other countries. Now, Canada, I know that's another country too, and the US. And what I can tell you is that you need to become very adept at understanding people's time zones and what are called overlap time. Say also, because of another business, we do business with people in South Korea. And overlap time is that at some point in your day, maybe early, maybe midday, maybe late, somewhere, there's going to be this overlap window, and that now you get very good at scheduling overlap time. So what you do is what I do, which is say, okay, I'm going to come up with the overlap. I'm going to figure out how to overlap this so I could talk to people in Australia, or I can talk to people in the UK, or I can talk to somebody in Poland, or I can talk to, I mean, Canada. I know we got the language barrier and all that stuff, but we can talk to people, get it. Just kidding. I've been there a bunch of times. But what I'm saying is that you figure out which time zone you're on, and then that way you can always make sure that you work through which time overlaps, and that way you schedule it, and then you get out of the problem of missing people. And so what you do is you find out what that window is. Maybe it starts at 2 in the afternoon where you are, and ends at 5 p.m. So that's your overlap window. Make sure that you put that as a note for the person that you're doing business with, and that way you will not run into the problem that most people run into, which is they are unable to. Sorry about that. I had an annoying annoyance. Would not go away. Yes, I don't want the call. How many times do I have to tell you that? Anyway, overlap window. So figure that out, write it down, put it in a way. Now, I wish that there was a calendaring system that actually did this. I have yet to find any system in the world that does this, but that is my method, Sandra, of dealing with that. And when you deal with overlap time, you get significantly better at dealing with people all over the world, all over the place, and away you go. All right. What do we have for our next exciting question? I know this is the last one, so make it a good one.
All right. How do you make the most with the time that you have?
I think that the way that you can actually get things done and be effective is that you need to be very time aware. And most of the time, I see people frittering away lots of time. They're doing things that are not very productive. They're not really life affirming. They're not getting to where they need to go. I mean, the COVID-19 situation, we had a lot of people who were sitting on the beach. It's not really the beach, but sitting at home, locked down. They're not, they're wasting their life watching, Netflix or watching cat videos on YouTube or whatever funny thing you want to do. But I'm going to say that you have to really get serious about realizing that your time is very precious. Treat it as such. Make sure that you continuously treat your time as being precious. And what you'll discover over your life is that you'll get more done. We all have a finite amount. Nobody knows exactly when it's going to end. Maybe in a murder mystery they do, but in real life, you don't know when it's going to happen. So make sure that you use the time you have. And for heaven's sakes, spend some time to organize and plan yourself. And then that way you can take all those little moments of time and make them work for you. Now, there's something called found time, FOUND, found time. And found time is much more fillable today. I mean, I do it because I have books on Kindle that I have in my phone. And when I have a little bit of a break, I'll be waiting in line while everybody else is irritated and pissed off. I'm sitting there reading something. I also, listen to audio at high speed. That's a good way to get stuff done. And more importantly is also to plan some downtime, plan some time where maybe you do nothing. Maybe we're, because see, we become stimulus junkies. But the most important thing is to make sure that you're deciding what you do. And that's really the final thing I'll leave you with is that you have to be decisive and decide what you will or will not do with your time. Most of us, of course, fall into the habit of responding to all of the urgencies, responding to all the issues, responding to all the problems, and never taking care of ourselves. In fact, one of the best things that ever happened to me was I worked for this guy, Joe. I call him Big Joe. And Joe was a great influence on my life. Now, Joe sadly is gone. But what Joe did is that he promoted me to becoming a district sales manager. And what I did was I ended up becoming very frustrated with those people who reported to me. So I worked very hard and diligently writing up a list of all the things that they were doing that really irritated the living shit out of me. And what I did was I flew up to see Joe, rented the car, walked into his office. I was steaming. Yeah, I was ready because I had all the justification that I knew I needed. I needed to, of course, can everybody, shoot them all, get rid of them all. And he says, "Why don't you close the door?" I closed the door and I'm getting everything unpacked. He goes, "Oh, no, don't do that." And I said, I got to tell you all this. And he looked at me and he said, "John, I can tell you're stressed." I mean, I was stressed. I wasn't sedate like I am now. I was just out of control. And Joe said, "Why don't you do this? Why don't you take today and think about some things, but why don't you take a mental health day? And why don't you go and, check into the hotel, go hang out, take a mental health day, and, we'll get together for dinner and then, we'll talk about it. And then tomorrow we'll really hit it hard." Now it is like 10 o'clock in the morning. The last thing I want to do is take off at this point in time. I want to make something happen, damn it, right now. And I did. I took a mental health day. And I met with Joe and he and I went to dinner and he looked at me and he said these very important words. "This life that you live is a volunteer effort. You have to make the choice to be here." So every day you make the choice about what you will or will not do. Every day you decide what needs to happen. Now, sometimes you have to do things that you don't want to do. Well, do them and work hard at them and take care of them so you can get to that other side. But the most important thing is that you decide, and decisions are what make up a day. Every day you make a decision here and a decision there and a decision everywhere. And with that, that's how you get the most out of the time you have. Now, what I just want to say is that I want to thank everybody who's been watching. We're getting some positive feedback. I want to thank Sandra, even though we are, it looks like she is frozen again. And what I can tell you is that the Raging Verbalist is something that we figured out how to do, and I am very pleased that we got to number 45. My goal is very simple. How do I provide great information, great insight, and maybe a little bit of fun and entertainment? And of course, with Sandra helping me out, I just want to thank everybody who's helps put together the Raging Verbalist, which every week, of course, is without a doubt a giant pain in the ass to get done. But that's what happens. And I make that decision every single day about how we're going to get this done. So with that, I want to thank Sandra, who looks like she's frozen again, and all of you. Remember to subscribe on YouTube to the Raging Verbalist. Ring that bell so you get notified we get a new one. If you got great comments, say wonderful things, go to Facebook's Position to Win book. Also, pick up a copy of the book and check it out. And until next week, this is John Paul Mendoza, the Raging Verbalist, and Sandra, who are still having technical difficulties. And we are going to say goodbye. And you have a great time and make a decision that it's your life and your life is worth living to the fullest. Do that every single day. And you know what you have? You actually absolutely have the life that you deserve. And with that, thank you, everybody, and be tuning in for the next Raging Verbalist.